UMCES, we welcome you all to this day of celebration, this commencement today. We may not be able to lay on the Blue Angels, but you may see the occasional F-18 or F-35 flying over. If so, it was for you. It is my pleasure today to introduce the sixth president of UMCES, Dr. Peter Goodwin. Dr. Goodwin has been with us now almost 2 years, and in that time he has led us in developing a series of key strategic initiatives which will reshape and reform the institution moving forward. Those initiatives, in true UMCES tradition, focus on science as a service for society. We will be focusing on issues such as climate change, on coastal resilience, on urban waterfronts. As a part of that process, Dr. Goodwin decided to forego a formal inauguration. We all know how much we like to get dressed up in these wonderful robes, so we were perhaps a little disappointed. But Peter instead chose, true to his character, a much more egalitarian approach. And we held about 9 months ago an environmental summit where he invited thought leaders from around the world in the area of the environment to come to us and help us think through our strategic plan. And we are all very excited as we begin this new initiative, and we're all looking forward to a very, very bright future for this institution. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our president, Dr. Peter Goodwin.
Thank you, Professor Miller, for those kind comments. And Professor Arroyo, President Emeritus Bosch, distinguished guests, UMCES family, and about-to-be graduates. Let us just take a moment to reflect on this 2019 UMCES commencement ceremony, how our graduates got here. They have completed the rigorous requirements of an elite research institution to achieve advanced degrees. They have been challenged, and they have met that challenge and are now prepared for a highly rewarding career. But our graduates are here today because of the support and understanding of family, friends, and the UMCES community who have been there for the grads during the all-nighters and inevitable doubts during the experience that a graduate student experiences. So please, grads, take a moment to look around, catch the eye of all of those who have supported you over the past few years to get you to this point. And let's have a round of applause for the families and friends that have made this happen. And I would also like to use this opportunity to acknowledge our faculty. Their high productivity, international reputations, commitment to addressing some of the most vexing environmental problems, and most of all, their dedication to the quality of the graduate experience in this program. This is truly exceptional. And I'd like to just give one small example. I've just come back from 2 weeks in China as part of an international delegation. And every meeting that I went to, somebody would say, "Lads, this is for you." But someone would say in the question and answers, the discussions, the public dinners, they would come up and say, "Oh, you're from UMCES. Do you know Larry Sanford? Do you know Russell Hill? Do you know Keith Eshelman? Please give them my regards. My postdoc is now, or my PhD student is now a postdoc at CBL," every time. And one of my colleagues from the Cambridge University in the UK had none of this, and he said, "Gosh, I've never heard of UMCES. You must be really huge." And so this gave me an opportunity to say, we're huge in impact, but we're small, but we're mighty. So the influence of our faculty and our alumni is totally disproportionate to our size. So graduates, you're about to join a small but elite club of UMCES alumni and part of the UMCES family. UMCES graduates excel, and as you will learn very soon in your career as you step out of here, just how quickly your influence grows. So with that introduction, I'd now like to move to the part of the program. We don't have a lot of internal awards in UMCES, but we do have two, and I think it's worth reflecting on that. The first award was initiated by our student council last year, and it's an award for the outstanding faculty mentor. And as the student council knows, this is really, really difficult at UMCES. And this is just the second year of the award. I'd like to recognize last year's recipient, Dr. Tetsuo Bakarov, who unfortunately could not be with us today. But for the 2019 award, I would like to invite up two of the UMCES current graduate students, Christina Gaethal and Fox.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to CBL. My name is Christina Gaethal, and I'm a PhD student here at the Chesapeake Biological Lab. I'm also the current chair of the UMCES Graduate Student Council, which is the governing body for students here at UMCES that started this award. As Dr. Goodwin said, this was started in 2018 by the GSC as a way for us as students to recognize the faculty here and acknowledge their outstanding commitment to us as students. This award is specifically designed to recognize a faculty member who has made significant contributions as an advisor and mentor to UMCES students through their dedication of their time, their energy, and their wisdom as it relates to our professional, personal, and career development. We had a large pool of nominations this year, and it really spoke highly of all of you faculty, so thank you for your work towards us students as mentors. It's a student-driven effort, and we send out a call to all UMCES students asking for nominations for this award. And once they're received, we alone as a student governance group get to vote for the recipient. This year I am pleased to introduce Drew Hobbs, a master's student here at CBL, and one of this year's recipients students to introduce her.
Thank you for the introduction, Christina. If you've had a chance to read through the program, you may have already seen some of what makes this year's recipient of the Outstanding Faculty Mentor Award so deserving. But if you haven't, I'd like to share just a few thoughts from some of her students over the years. Her current PhD student has said, "What makes Dr. Lapham special as an advisor is that she's willing to be truthful to us as her students. Laura has realistically laid out challenges of balancing work and home. For me as a young female scientist, it is great to have a mentor who is both a successful mother and scientist. Dr. Lapham was our greatest champion, helping us overcome our challenges and celebrating with us when we succeed." One of Dr. Lapham's former master's students has said, "Unbeknownst to me, Dr. Lapham inquired around CBL and connected me with Andrew Hayes, who was working on research more aligned with my background. They worked together to get me the scholarship money to attend CBL. I personally have spent the majority of the last year and a half working very closely with Dr. Lapham in the lab, in the field, and in the classroom. And I found that she brings a naturally encouraging and energy and attitude to all of these environments. Her demeanor has helped inspire and compel me when I've had obstacles in my own research, and she never fails to sit down and take the time to work through a problem with me. Just 2 weeks ago, I ran into a fairly daunting setback with the instrument that I use to analyze all the samples that I collect in the field. This instrument is notorious for having very poor timing and acting up at inopportune moments, so naturally at about 4:45 in the afternoon it decided to give me trouble. I went up to Dr. Lapham's office and talked to her about the problem, thinking that we could work through it the next morning, but without missing a beat, she got up from her desk, walked down to the lab with me, and spent the next 2 hours troubleshooting the issue. I was fairly discouraged when I first discovered that problem, but Laura was enthusiastic as we worked to solve the issue, motivating and encouraging me. It's this sort of vivacious attitude that makes Laura such an inspirational and effective mentor, and these counselors are just a few of the examples of the impacts that she's made on her students and the community. I'm honored to present this year's Outstanding Faculty Mentor Award to Dr. Laura Lapham, and would like to invite her up to this time.
Hold on, sir. Do you want to say some words?
I'm not used to this kind of thing. Wow, I just want to say thank you so much to the students for having this type of award. Mentoring is an amazing thing that we do every day, and I certainly care a lot about it. And what Drew says is right. I mean, that instrument. But I think we've got it. So yeah, knock on wood. So again, thank you so much, Drew, for those words, and for the students who nominated me, and then to UMCES as a whole for everything that the faculty do for students and mentoring. So thank you.
Well, congratulations, Laura, and I guess that means that Director Miller can expect a proposal on Monday morning. The second award we have exists due to the generosity of President Emeritus Don Bosch. And one of the many institutional legacies of Dr. Bosch for UMCES. Okay, we got it the first time. One of the many institutional legacies that Don had left was the importance of this institution of application of science. And in recognition of that, he very generously endowed a gift to be entitled the President's Award in the Application of Science. And the instructions are very simple. It's to perpetuate the key institutional priority of application of science, but it's also to support the local artist community. So this award is always a unique piece of art related to the researcher's expertise. So I know we have several former winners of the award in the house today, so former winners, if you'd just like to stand up and be recognized again. Congratulations. And so for this year's award, I'd like to pose a question. What's the common factor? CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, Newsweek, National Geographic, The Atlantic, Wired, Fast Company, Scientific American, Breitbart, CBC News, Smithsonian, Science, Popular Science, Voice of America in Russian, Baltimore Sun, CNN covering worldwide to Moose Jaw Today in Manitoba, as well as national news outlets in the United Kingdom, Pakistan, Singapore, Romania, Australia, Norway, Mexico, Italy, Poland, Panama, Venezuela, Argentina, Kuwait, South Africa, Iran, Macau, Chile, Nigeria, and India. So this research is estimated to have reached more than 500 million people across the globe. And the answer, of course, is this is the 2019 UMCES President's Award for Science. So, Dr. Fitzpatrick, come on down. And perhaps you could also just join and Professor Bosch, if you'd also like to join for the pictures. So, while they're coming up, Matt has been with UMCES since 2009, 10 years. He has more than 40 publications in peer-reviewed journals on global change, spatial ecology and biodiversity. But 10 years ago, he started thinking about how to translate projections of future climate change to something that resonated with people, with communities. And this is something that's very special about UMCES. With our support from the state, our researchers don't have to stumble from one project to the next, but they have the ability to put part of their time to these much longer, bigger term issues. So he developed something called climate analog mapping for more than 540 urban areas and that affects 250 million Americans. He then pioneered a statistical technique that matches the expected future climate location at one location with other cities that are currently experiencing similar climates. And so by the end of this century, in one generation, the climate experienced in many North American cities is projected to change of that of location hundreds of miles away, or perhaps not even in the United States. Prior to the publication's release, he sought the assistance of our communications director, Amy Polzinski, who immediately recognized the potential impact of this research. And they worked very carefully on crafting a communication plan to ensure that his science attracted the interview requests from around the world. So it's a pleasure to honor Matt today with the President's Award for Science Application, to honor his exemplary work not just in pioneering research, but the impact that that's having on the United States and beyond. And so I'd like to give this award, but I'd like to add one other thought, because based on Don's legacy, we wanted to put a lot of thought, and Don, we departed from your guidelines. Don wanted to support the local artists, so we defined local as scientists. And there's an emerging artist called Jillian Palto, who is a federal research scientist working in the polar regions. So she obviously has a lot of time at certain times of the year. And what she's done is to start developing art that depicts climate data, and it's become hugely popular. So this award that we're going to be given, and thanks to Laurie Stepp, who researched all of this, Laurie was able to negotiate the first time that an original piece of her art she is allowed out because of this award and the message she's trying to give. So it's an original piece of art that depicts climate change in a very artistic way. So Don, I hope that's okay with your mission. So with that, I would like to present the art from Jillian Palto to Matt. So congratulations.
Matt, you want to say a few words?
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to receive the award, and thanks to Dr. Bosch for allowing that to happen for Past and Future. I also want to thank Amy Pelzinski. So her help was really key in training me basically how to talk to the media, which took a lot of the nerves off, which was great. And Kat Stylinski, who gave me really important feedback on the application that I developed to make it easier to use and communicate better, and also Andrew Elmore and folks at Ian that also took some time to help me through it. So thanks to everybody, really appreciate it.
And I should also add that Matt has now become a preferred source on climate change for CNN. You probably saw him a few weeks ago in a climate debate. So Matt, just a terrific achievement. It's now my distinct honor to introduce the 2019 commencement speaker for UMCES. And this is truly a pleasure, as we've had a chance to interact in my year and a bit here in Maryland. Vicky Arroyo is the director of the Georgetown Climate Center at Georgetown Law School, where she is also assistant dean for centers and institutes and a professor of practice. The Georgetown Climate Center has just celebrated its 10th anniversary. And this anniversary was celebrated with many high-profile politicians, industry leaders, who came to pay tribute to the very high impact of the information generated by this center. And in particular, Vicky Arroyo's exceptional leadership. Vicky oversees the center's work at the nexus of climate and energy policy, supervising work on climate mitigation and adaptation at the state and federal level, and is a major player for the Maryland Climate Change Commission and many other activities. Using the best available science, she collaborates with US policymakers at the state and federal level to develop planetary management strategies. In other words, strategies which can be picked up, used by other countries, other regions. Recently, the Georgetown Climate Center has been collaborating with UMCES in a variety of public engagement events around transportation, climate initiatives that her center facilitates. And her work primarily focuses on how we can address the uncertainty associated with climate change and make meaningful strides towards preparing homes and cities for the change ahead. Her popular TED Talk on preparing for climate change has now passed 1 million views. She teaches experiential law courses on climate change, environmental issues, and given invited lectures at numerous universities across the US and beyond. She's practiced environmental law in the private sector and served in 2 offices of the US EPA and the Office of Air and Radiation and the Office of Research and Development, where she reviewed the standards under the Clean Air Act. She currently serves on the Executive Committee of the National Transportation Research Board of the National Academy of Sciences and is a member of a study committee on the future of the interstate highway system. But she's still one of us. She has a bachelor's in biology from Emory with a double major in philosophy, a master's of public administration from Harvard, where she received the Don K. Price Award for academic achievement and commitment to public service, the top honors in that program. And she holds a JD magna cum laude from Georgetown Law School, where she was also editor-in-chief of the Georgetown International Environmental Law Review. So on behalf of UMCES, welcome to deliver the 2019 commencement address.
Thank you so much, President Goodwin, and congratulations to the class of 2019. Let's hear it. I'm so delighted to be here. I have to say, I love commencements. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak to you on such an important and memorable occasion, although an informal poll of my friends and family suggests that many of us do not remember the speakers or the speeches, but that's okay. They don't remember them unless they go on too long, so I'm going to try to avoid that. It's especially an honor to join this celebration because I've had a long and positive association with UMCES, beginning in 1995, some years after Don Bosch had moved here from our home state of Louisiana. At the time, I was an attorney at a DC law firm, and I was volunteering on the weekends with a nonprofit called Raising Hispanic Academic Achievement that was based in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I was mentoring high school and other students. And I was able to secure a small EPA grant to introduce teens to environmental work, measuring the water quality in Sligo Creek, monitoring their homes for radon and carbon monoxide, and evaluating exposures to toxics using the toxics release inventory information at the University of Maryland campus in College Park. So we really were already integrated with the University of Maryland back then. And I called my friend Don from Louisiana and asked him whether we might use Horn Point as a capstone for this summer effort. And he and his staff were incredibly welcoming and helpful, introducing students to environmental issues around the Bay and to the constellations. For many, it was their first time away from their homes and families, and the first time in their lives that they had seen the stars clearly at night. And not only was it memorable for all of us, it was life-changing for some who went on to complete degrees in environmental science and engineering. And it's been great to see the success of people like Ana Ariaza, who's now a University of Maryland graduate and who leads Montgomery County's Watershed Protection and Outreach Program, teaching the next generation of students 20 years later, more than 20 years later. More recently, our Georgetown Climate Center, as you heard, has had the opportunity to work with President Goodwin and with Dave to host public engagement events around the Transportation and Climate Initiative our center facilitates, which we call TCI. Transportation is now the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Maryland, in the region, in the country, and TCI is a dialogue of 12 states plus Washington, D.C., working together to reduce emissions from the transportation sector and to provide better options and investments, including in communities most affected by air pollution and climate change. In thinking about both of these experiences made possible through collaboration with UMCES, I realized that they illustrate the importance of going beyond research, science, and analysis to connect with people, not only academic partners and experts, but also the people whose lives are affected by environmental policy. I first became interested in studying environmental issues at a very young age in New Orleans when I was concerned about the quality of our drinking water, which had passed through most of the United States and the chemical and petrochemical plants upriver. My classes in science as an undergraduate, in public policy and public health during graduate school, and in law prepared me to collect, synthesize, and interpret the scientific data and conduct policy and legal analysis. What I've learned since then is that to truly move forward with solving complex, challenging issues, I have to return to those New Orleans roots as a young citizen activist who had to ask my parents to drive me to the public library for meetings because I wasn't old enough to drive yet, and to engage with stakeholders and the communities. Whether it's setting pollution standards for Chesapeake Bay, helping communities prepare for climate impacts, including heat waves or rising seas, or curbing emissions from power plants, cars, and trucks, it's not enough to apply what's taught in formal classes. It's not enough to offer policy solutions based on our expert judgment, or to provide answers from the ivory tower or a lab as beautiful as and it's not enough to have the expertise and authority of natural resource agencies at the state and federal level where some of you might go to work. That's because no matter how rigorous our analysis and how eloquently we are able to defend the science and policy on the merits, these decisions will not be translated into robust and enduring policies without public support. That's not to suggest your years of hard work and training are not essential. The world needs more people who truly understand the complex environmental challenges we're facing. Scientific knowledge is absolutely necessary, but it's not by itself sufficient. Expertly conducted scientific research, effective policy analysis, and good intentions have to be combined with the messy and time-consuming work of public and, yes, even political engagement. I know this is scary territory for those of us who like to stay in our disciplinary lanes and have a sense of control over our work, but it's essential. There's an African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I'll give you two examples of processes that, while not perfect, bring together not only the scientific and policy expertise, but also public engagement. Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts and the Transportation and Climate Initiative. With UMCES conducting monitoring and modeling work around setting the water quality standards, or TMDL, parents, you can ask your students what that means, for the Bay, the Chesapeake Bay effort provides an excellent case study of collaboration and outreach. That process includes engagement across agency silos, or as an earlier commencement speaker, Secretary Ben Grumbles of the Maryland Department of Environment calls them, cylinders of excellence, across levels of government, local, state, and federal, and it engages diverse stakeholders, including NGOs, farmers, and indigenous voices, resulting in a successful collaboration that has withstood changes in administrations and served as an example of bipartisan cooperation and engagement on a major environmental challenge. TCI represents another example of the painstaking work it takes to forge relationships across agencies. This time, we bring together transportation, energy, and environment agencies across both Republican-led and Democratic-led states. In recent years, TCI states have engaged in conversations regarding potential regional policy design with diverse constituencies, holding two major summits in D.C. and in New York in 2017, and a series of region-wide listening sessions, 6 of them, in 2018, with 500 stakeholders who came and 100 state staff leaders and state leaders participating. This informed a public statement last December that the states would work together this year to design a transportation policy proposal based on a cap and invest model, a price signal that could begin to signal a shift away from carbon-based fuels, with the proceeds used to invest in supporting clean transportation options and investment in resilience in communities, with input from the public about their priorities. It's an ambitious effort that entails a great deal of work on both the analytical side and additional outreach. We've had events in Boston last month, in Newark last week, and we're planning one in July with the help of UMCES in Baltimore. We'll be collaborating again and working out the logistical as well as the substantive details. Sometimes I feel, and maybe Dave does too, more like an event planner than an academic. I can't promise that we'll be successful in answering all the concerns about the policy. There will be those opposed on both the right and the left. But I can tell you we've worked incredibly hard to make sure those most affected, the potentially regulated community, frontline environmental justice communities, transportation and environmental advocates, and more are engaging. Because sometimes creating a space where people can listen to each other's perspectives and build common understanding can do more to advance the cause than another report. And if that means we've spent our time making sure we've ordered enough coffee and sandwiches to keep people talking, then I think it's worth the time and effort to leave our offices and engage. Some days work on environmental issues, especially climate change, feels daunting. And some days for you students, your work will feel overwhelming too, including when there are administrations change and policy rollbacks that cause setbacks. Sometimes the work can feel very thankless. That goes with the territory. But often the most important things to do are some of the most difficult, and they're worth it. Frankly, if they were easy, they would have been done by now. If you don't remember anything else from this talk, I hope you'll remember this. For major environmental challenges, saving Chesapeake Bay, curbing or preparing for climate change, individual institutions, even relatively small but mighty ones, like UMCES and the Georgetown Climate Center, can play a vital role. And individual people, like my friend Don Bosch, in their course of their lifetimes, and like each of you graduating today, can make a difference. And we really need you to join this fight. During your career, it will be more important and urgent that you bring your expertise and skills to these major challenges of our time, even as you reach out in partnership to others and take the next step forward and the next. Not always linear and forward. Remember, we're not only trying to go fast, but to go far, so we must do it together. I look forward to watching you apply what you've learned in your time here and partnering with you as you work to protect this planet we call home. Thank you.
Thank you for that inspiring talk, and you can see why the Georgetown Climate Center is just so effective. So thank you for that, and this is a small memento for being the 2019 commencement speaker. Now I'd like to introduce the director of the UMCES program that our students know have graduated, but for parents this is a collaboration. It's a University System of Maryland program. And so Dr. Painter has the unenviable task of working across multiple institutions, and you do that very well. So Dr. Painter.
One of the disadvantages of coming last in the program, or almost last, is that everybody steals your thunder before you get to say anything. And I did want to use climate change as a focal point of greeting and charging this year's students. It's a big task, and one that I'm afraid is accelerating faster than we thought. And so it's going to fall to you guys, your generation, and your children, to really begin to address climate change in a serious way. So you guys are uniquely prepared to do this. UMCES is spread over 4 institutions, and it's not just a physical separation, it's an academic separation. So your colleagues, some of whom are studying molecular biology in Baltimore, are learning about their peers' work at CBL on fisheries science or bluegrass. We have the Appalachian Lab studying mine leachates and upland issues in the environment, and we have blue water oceanographers who are sampling and learning about Arctic ice melting and Arctic oceans. So you have a unique training from the MEAS program that gives you this very broad aspect of understanding climate change and what's going to be necessary. Did you play that time? And so, you guys are uniquely prepared to jump into this challenge. And I know from my familiarity with many of the students that some of you want to go into academia, some want to go into private research or private business. Some of you want to go with NGOs and some with federal and state agencies. That's great. That's where we want the spread of these, you alumni, to be. And if you look at the alumni page on our website, you'll see that that's where our alumni already are. So I encourage you to follow your heart. Watch out. Climate change is coming. I have two young grandsons who I've warned my son already about that are going to be counting on us and you guys to help deal with climate change. Okay? So I'd like to close with just a couple of quotes. One is by Muhammad Ali, who I respect a lot more after having read this quote by him. But I think it appeals, and to me it's really relevant to the MEAS grads. And that is, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Your rent is going to be doing your part to helping deal with climate change and other aspects of science that are related to that. Okay? And the second quote, and I don't know who to attribute it to because I just wrote it down on my iPhone after I heard it, is that leadership is not about being best. Leadership is about making everyone else better. You guys carry that forward and we'll be in good hands. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Sanford. I'm the Interim Vice President for Education at UMCES. It's my great privilege and honor to introduce and moderate the graduation ceremony of the class of 2019 from UMCES. I did want to say too, I was looking through this list, and I've been on the committees or taught in class about 7 out of these 10 young people, and I'm really pleased to see them all here. We will go in order. We'll go through the Doctor of Philosophy candidates first, and then we'll go through the Master's candidates. The very first Doctor of Philosophy candidate is Maureen Brooks. She was in the MEAS program in oceanography. Her thesis, her dissertation title, is The Physical Biological Interactions Driving the Pelagic Sargassum Distribution. Her advisor is Dr. Victoria Coles from Horn Point Laboratory. Please come forward.
The great thing about being at a small but mighty institution is that I have the opportunity to say a few words about Maureen and Maureen's exceptional intellectual capabilities and remarkable scientific achievements. Maureen took on a very pure science topic, that of the distribution of sargassum. She made transformative advances in our understanding of that organism. She was truly the first to understand what drives the distribution of this really important algae and its ecological implications. it turned out that this had management implications, although we did not know it at the time. Since we began working, and Maureen began working on this organism, it has had massive blooms in the Caribbean and caused a lot of damage, economic damage to the tourism industry. And the work that Maureen has been carrying out is going to be essential to understanding and forecasting its distribution. So pure science can often have really profound management implications. Maureen, I won't go on forever, but I do want to say a few more things, which is that Maureen has had a stellar record of achievements, including being awarded the NSF Blue Water Fellowship for High Performance Computing, something she took on entirely on her own, showing incredible initiative. And she brought that forward to using high performance computing to drive her research further. So she is now a Knaus Fellow, bringing that interest in management forward, working with the oceanographer of the Navy as the liaison, as the policy liaison. And so just the last thing is that, as I think happens with all PhD students, we have transferred from being a mentor-mentee relationship over the time to being really more like collaborators in her last years. And I and my lab group really miss her incredible intellectual contributions and her incredible curiosity.
Okay. Our second candidate is John Blake Clark. He was in the UMCES program in oceanography also. His dissertation title is Development of a Biogeochemical Modeling System to Estimate Fluxes and Controls of Estuarine Organic Matter Cycling. His advisor was Dr. Raleigh Hood from Horn Point Laboratory, who cannot be here. So I'm going to do the honors. Raleigh sent a bunch of words. I'm just reading him verbatim. I'm very sorry that I could not attend the UMCES Commencement today to celebrate Blake's and all of our students' graduations. This is a joyous and important event, and I hate to miss. As Larry reads this letter, I'm on a 32-day research cruise in the eastern Indian Ocean, sampling along 110 degrees east longitude. Blake, having been to sea many times on the open ocean, knows how exciting it is to be participating in an oceanographic expedition. I'm sure he'll forgive my absence. So about Blake. Blake was an outstanding student in every respect. He's super smart and super motivated, and he aggressively pursues his research, but he's also a really nice guy. Everybody likes Blake. He was always generous with his time, helping my students and other students at Horn Point with their projects. Indeed, over the last few years, Blake effectively became a co-advisor for my students, providing guidance, training, and especially help with technical problems. He always listened carefully to my other students as they described their progress and challenges, and he often provided key insights to solve difficult problems. Blake also made many important contributions to Horn Point and UMCES. He was involved in all the graduate student activities, including the Graduate Student Council, representing the students at faculty meetings, and even helped with fundraising. I believe that Blake participated in every single Chesapeake Champion event we had while he was at Horn Point. I think that's true. Blake's thesis was focused on modeling biogeochemical exchanges and transformations between marshes and estuarine waters. He developed sophisticated new methods for representing dissolved organic matter transformations in numerical simulation models that represent significant scientific advances. Blake is now a postdoc at NASA Goddard with Dr. Antonio Manino modeling and observing land-ocean interactions and biogeochemical transformations in the Arctic. He secured the position by writing a successful postdoc proposal to NASA, which he conceived, wrote, and submitted almost entirely by himself. I am grateful to have had the opportunity to advise Blake Congratulations, Dr. Clark. Sincerely, Raleigh.
No.
She's in the MEAS program in Earth and Ocean Sciences. Her dissertation title was Characterization of Oyster-Associated Biogeochemical Processes in Oyster Restoration and Aquaculture. Her advisor is Dr. Jeffrey Cornwell from Horn Point. Please come up.
Having Melanie graduate has a lot of very positive and negative components. Melanie has been one of the central figures in the graduate population at Horn Point in her time here, doing a master's originally, and for the last 5 semesters only that she's been doing her PhD in my laboratory. The work she's been carrying out has implications for how we look at oysters and their benefit to society, as well as to the aquaculture industry. She is currently a NOAA Knaus Fellow, and I expect that over the next few years, people will be asking me, I know Melanie Jackson, who are you again? Because I think they already knew that at Horn Point. So.
Candidate is Kelly Pierce. Kelly did her degree in the MEAS program in ecology. The title of her dissertation is The Influence of the River Otter, Lontra canadensis, on Aquatic Conservation in the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem, a socio-ecological approach to evaluating conservation flagships. She was co-advised by Dr. Kathleen Stalinsky from the Appalachian Lab and Dr. Thomas Surface from Holzberg State University. Come forward.
So it has been my great pleasure to be one of Kelly's co-advisors. Kelly took on a very complicated topic, flagship species, which really resides at the borders between ecology and social science, and thus required Kelly to take deep dives into unfamiliar literature and methodologies, and led to great conversations between the two of us around social science. Kelly's not just an amazing researcher, she's an amazing teacher. She now has a position teaching at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania. But clear evidence of her teaching was apparent on the day she gave her defense, when it was, we surely violated the fire code because we had to bring in every chair we could find, with not just her friends and family, but her former students from Frostburg State University. But perhaps Kelly's greatest achievement is that she managed to survive 2 advisors, benefited from both of our wisdom, our clear directions, which I'm sure at times went like this. So it's really been wonderful. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Tom, who has worked with Kelly. Tom Surface at Frostburg State University, who has worked with Kelly from the very beginning and can give you even a more in-depth view on her.
Thanks, Kat. I hope Blake and Kelly know each other, because in hearing what a nice guy he is, that's the first thing I think about of Kelly. She's a great person. So you don't know each other, you should chat. I've had the pleasure of working with Kelly now for somewhere around 8 years for her master's at Frostburg State University, and then also the privilege of working with her for a PhD. You know, she's really dedicated to conservation, and some of the earlier remarks here about turning science into applied aspects of conservation, I think, is what Kelly really excels at, and what she really wants to do as a professional. Her PhD dissertation involved as well as her master's. It involved social science, it involved traditional ecological science, involving landscape modeling, and it was really a lot of complex things that she did, and she did them all in a really positive way. And always smiling along the way too. And I think the way we handled her PhD program would have been really challenging for a lot of people. And I started making a list of some of the ways that she was able to move through the PhD program. And that involves starting as a TA during the coursework phase of her program at College Park. So she's a TA, she's starting work in Yellowstone National Park, but that was short term, and we never had permanent funding or long-term funding. So she was also for 3 years a full-time faculty member instructor at Frostburg State University in the Department of Biology. This is a lot of stuff going on. Then in the process, she successfully wrote 3 grants and was a principal investigator on those, not just for river otters, but for spotted skunks and for Allegheny wood rats in Maryland and West Virginia. She's on 3 masters, was on 3 masters committee, including currently co-advising a master's program. She's mentored over 15 graduate students. I can go on and on like this, but it's not an easy way to get a PhD. But she did it positively throughout the whole process, and I learned a whole lot from her, and it was hard to keep up with her. Everybody here publishes a lot. While she was doing her PhD, all those things I mentioned, she co-authored 5 publications, including one first authored by an undergraduate student that she mentored. And those are not related to her PhD research. She's given presentations at least 15 regional, national, and international meetings. She was recognized by the Maryland-Delaware chapter of the Wildlife Society as a Student Conservationist of the Year. So I'm going to stop there. Other people have to talk also, but I've really enjoyed the opportunity of working with Kelly and Kat. Thank you also.
I just have to make a personal remark. I've done this now. This is Ed Hood, who's in the audience, did this the first 2 times we had a commencement. I've done it, this is my 3rd time. I absolutely love this part of my job. Our next candidate is Emily Russ. She was in the MEES program in oceanography. Her Her dissertation title was Sediment Connectivity Between the Lower Susquehanna River and Upper Chesapeake Bay. Her advisor is Dr. Cindy Palinkas from Board Point. Please come forward.
I'm so proud of Emily. Her dissertation is it's awesome, just to put it bluntly. The things she figured out. So she took the old Sediment Bay sediment budget for the Chesapeake Bay that was last done in the 80s and updated it, which is so badly needed by any manager in this area. And the things that she did to add to it is just not update, but add the state of the science to it. So she figured out what are the sediment accumulation rates on the Susquehanna Flats, the large SAV bed at the head of the bay, and how does that bed modulate how sediment gets from the Susquehanna River into the upper bay. It's not a straight shot. The plants have a role in that, and she figured that out. And then she figured out a way to trace sediments to figure out whether they're coming from the shoreline or coming from the river, which is incredibly important if you're a manager in the Chesapeake Bay. And then she wrapped it all up in this beautiful chapter that puts it all together and updates it for our knowledge, and it drives us forward towards addressing the TMDLs. We need to know where the sediment is going, where it's coming from, and how it's moving around, and that's what she did. And she taught me along the way. She couldn't graduate until she gave me her R scripts and taught me some GIS stuff. And that's the hallmark of an awesome PhD student. So.
Shifting Inputs and Transformations of Nitrogen in Forested and Mixed Land Use Basins, Implications for Hydrological Nitrogen Loss. His advisor is Dr. Keith Eshman from the Appalachian Laboratory.
Well, what a happy day this is, isn't it? I mean, this is really the epitome of what we do in academia. And you know, sometimes people ask me, you know, what is a career in academia and science really like? It's really exciting, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it's like that, and it's also kind of like climbing a never-ending staircase to the top, sort of like the Washington Monument, where you never quite get there. So there's that going on. So it really does behoove us to take an hour out of one day, out of 1 year, to come together and celebrate the achievements of some of our finest young scholars here that are seated to my right. And this gentleman right here, Robert Sabo. Robert, it was really a privilege to advise you over the course of not just a master's degree, but also a PhD. And just very quickly, a few of the highlights of your career to this point. Robert, as a master's student, received an EPA, highly prestigious EPA STAR Fellowship to work on the problem of nitrogen biogeochemistry in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. These are very, very hard to get, and almost on his own initiative, really his own initiative, he was able to receive that and parlay that into a very nice master's thesis. Once he decided to continue with the PhD program, the funding kind of dried up a little bit, and Robert said, that's not going to really stop me. I'm going to pursue an ORISE fellowship with the US EPA in Arlington, Virginia, and he was successful at doing that. So this is somebody I think really exemplifies this idea of being able to climb that unending staircase. And with that in mind, you're not at the top of the monument yet, just so you know. You might have 2 or 3 steps just to go. I just want to relate one thing that does seem appropriate on a day like this of graduation. You probably don't remember this, but when Robert first showed up at the Appalachian Laboratory in, was it 2011, I believe, Not long after he arrived, I remember there was an issue, and I remember telling him something, a little piece of advice, and I think it's appropriate today that I repeat that. I said to Robert in a moment, I said, everything is a test. Everything is a test. So that seems appropriate today, and it is my pleasure, distinct pleasure, to tell Robert and tell you that, Robert, you have passed the test.
Everything is a test.
Fix the front needs to be fixed.
There you go.
Our next candidate is Susan Sharastani. She was in the UMCES program in Fisheries Science. Her dissertation was titled Spatial and Temporal Population Dynamics of the Chesapeake Bay Sea Nettle. Her advisor was Dr. Hongsheng Bi from CBL. He can't be here, he's in Japan on sabbatical. Dr. Thomas Miller will say a few words and end with her.
Hongsheng sends his apologies, but his absence gives me the tremendous opportunity to say a few words about Suzanne. Suzanne, more than any other student we've had, I think, at CBL, not only has followed her own path, but she's built her own path as she has gone along. You just get the prop playing. Suzanne, since early childhood, has been interested in food security, and it's really been that that's driven her from her native New York, where she did her undergraduate degree, to the Hashemite University in Jordan, and eventually here to CBL. She was working on a very difficult problem of trying to count jellyfish in the water that are largely transparent but break apart when you try and pull a net through the water. And she developed a sonar camera system, or used a sonar camera system to effectively take sound pictures of jellyfish. And she could then count them from those pictures. She then decided, and I can remember the day very clearly, her saying to me, well, I'm going to enroll in this Ratcliffe Environmental Entrepreneurship Fellow, which our colleagues at IMET run. And I said, well, Suzanne, that's a different path. She said, no, it's not. It's the same path I've always been on. You've just not realized it yet. And as part of that fellowship, she used the technologies and the techniques she had developed in her academic research to develop her own small company that tried to image fish for recreational fishermen. She then went to Ireland on another environmental startup that took her from Ireland to Norway and to Southeast Asia, where she became challenged by the issue of shrimp farming, and shrimp farmers don't know how many shrimp are in their ponds. And Suzanne now is using that same technique that she used to image jellyfish in the river beside us to now help shrimp farmers to understand the production of their systems. Not only is that by itself cool, but several people with money think it's cool. NSF has just awarded her one of their Small Business Innovation Research, which is a prestigious award from NSF. And there are large funders who are interested in investing heavily in Suzanne's company because of the potential impact it has and the potential impact on the food security for millions of people around the world. So it is with really great pleasure that I get to hood Dr. Suzanne Sharastani.
last of our PhD students who are here. There are 3 more who finished in the last year but weren't able to be here today. We'll move on to our master's students. The first is Anne Carew from the MEAS program in Environmental Science. Her thesis title was Turian Size Advantage in the Restoration of Allicinaria americana, the Importance of Genetic Identity and Diversity. Her advisor is Dr. Katja Engelhardt from AL. Please come forward.
It is such a pleasure for me to be here. This is just an exciting day. So when Annie came into my office the first day she was at AL, I told her something that I tell all prospective students or new students, and that is she's made a good choice in going for a master's program, because a master's program opens doors. And it opens doors in all of sciences, in all disciplines, but I think it especially opens doors in environmental science. There's so many doors to go through, and it can actually be daunting and hard to maybe even make a decision in the end. Especially for somebody like Annie, who is just so interested in so many things. She's a very curious person, and I really love that about her. And so what that entails is a lot of self-reflection. And so we've had a lot of discussions in my office about this, about who she is and who she wants to become. And so I've learned many things about Annie that I really adore about her. One thing is that she has a love of nature. She celebrates the beauty of nature. I have a picture of her of a little insect, 6-legged insect, right in front of her face, and she's cooing at it. And she also coos at her plants, her Vallisneria americana plants that we worked on for the last 2.5 years. So she's learned, she's really, actually, I think she started as an animal person, but I think she's really learned to appreciate plants and is now cooing at them. The other thing I really, really appreciate about Annie is that she has a hunger for knowledge. She is a student for life, and I hope all of you graduate students continue to be that way. Because if you are a student for life, you inherit the earth. It is important to keep on learning, and I know Annie will do that because that's the person she is. And finally, another thing that I really appreciate, and I actually saw that on her CV before I even got to know her in person, is that she loves to write. She has always loved to write, even as a child, and she continues to do that now, and it was a real pleasure to mentor her through her proposal writing process and then her thesis writing process, because it was easy. to read her writing, and a pleasure to read her writing. And so she's actually working on a publication right now that we're hoping to submit. And she's also written a web article about seminal science that has been conducted in a national park. It was written by Robert Whitaker in the Great Smoky Mountains. And this is an article that I really did not have to edit. It was just basically there, so she has an incredible talent for writing. So I am super proud of you, Annie. I am proud of you for the person you are, for your accomplishments, for the wonderful thesis project that you have created or developed on genetic diversity and how that impacts restoration of aquatic systems. You could have gone the easy route and worked in the Chesapeake Bay, but Annie actually wrote a successful proposal to the Polgar group up at the Hudson River Foundation, and so she actually went up to the Hudson River. She was also the finalist of a prestigious NOAA fellowship. And now, actually within a week, she's going to start an internship with the Integration and Application Network under the supervision of Bill Dennison and his group. And he's actually sitting right there. And I know she's going to be in absolutely wonderful hands, and that she's just going to have a bright future. So I only have one regret. Sorry, Annie. And that and that is coming back to her celebrating the beauty of nature and her just loving all kinds of critters, big and small, is that when that first day in the office, she said, "Katya, I would really like to work with ducks." What? Ducks? Where did that come from? I thought we were talking about plants before. Where did ducks come from? But I like to support some creativity and all that, and so we worked out some interesting research on how ducks can disperse Vallisneria americana seeds and therefore create genetic diversity in populations of Chesapeake Bay and the Hudson River. My regret is that research never really panned out. It got left out of the thesis because it just didn't pan out for various reasons. However, because of this regret, I decided to carve a duck for her. It is not a canvas back, which would be Aphia vallisneria, which would have been appropriate because that particular duck species really enjoys to eat vallisneria. So it's a different duck, but yes, it's carved by me. My major advisor also carved a duck for me and gave it to me, and it is a very treasured thing I have it in my office, and I just love it dearly. And on the bottom of this, I wrote, something else you should know about Annie is that she is passionate about Broadway plays and loves the Broadway play Hamilton, and she went to that play with her parents who are in the audience. So I wrote down here, there is a million things I have not done, just you wait. And I think that is Annie. There are so many things that she can do with her life, and I know she will accomplish a lot. And then underneath, I have written, believe in your dreams, follow your heart.
Our next candidate for a master's degree is Sam Major. He was in the UMCES program in environmental molecular biology and biotechnology. His thesis title was The Probiotics of Biofuel, a metagenomic study of microalgae grown for fuel production. His advisor is Dr. Russell Hill from IMED. Please come.
So Sam Major was already a very accomplished microbiologist when he joined my lab. He's done research at the Moat Marine Lab and had worked for 3 years at the Tufts Institute for Veterinary Medicine. His work in my lab was looking at the amazing diversity of the microalgae and the bacteria in production facilities of a small Maryland company that is aiming to make biofuels from mixed algal cultures. And Sam just did a great job with this. He combined molecular approaches and a lot of traditional microbiology approaches, really got novel insights into the complexity of these communities, what's driving them, and what is good for improving the potential for biofuels production. So very exciting research. One side thing that came out of this work is because he isolated so many bacteria, we've discovered some new bacteria that are making plant growth hormones that are improving the growth of algae. And that has started an entirely new research direction in my lab that Yantal Lee and I are continuing with as we go forward. And Sam really benefited. He has great quantitative skills. He benefited from some of the biostats and bioinformatics classes in the UMCES program and produced an outstanding thesis. very recently we learned that Sam has just got his dream job back in New England, and he will be heading up to back to New England very soon, in a few days, to become research associate and lab manager at the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute. So very exciting news, I think, for Sam. I'm really proud of him. He's done a great job.
Our final master's candidate of the afternoon is Matthew Spitznagel, who's in the MEES program in Fisheries Science. His thesis title was Mortality and Reovirus Infection in Soft-Shell Blue Crab, Kalanectes sapidus aquaculture. His advisor is Dr. Eric Schott at IMET.
Matt has a lot to be proud of standing here today. I've written a lot, and I think I'm going to keep it short since I'm standing between us and lunch, and it's hot. I want to start with his qualities. I think one of the things that stands out for me are Matt's qualities as a scientist and as a person and a colleague. And I think that it's inherent in all of the graduates, but Matt has a real love of the science. Love comes from quantifying and understanding nature and love of aquatic animals and the people that depend on it. And I think that that love comes out of a generosity. Matt is one of the most generous people, one of the most patient people that I've known. And I think that's part of the kind of the scientist that he is. His patience and his generosity helped him to take on a pretty challenging fisheries/aquaculture project that was written by a molecular biologist from the university, from a medical school. And so what I threw Matt into was a project that was to create a data set using molecular methods. And he had to interact with a whole lot of people to do that. He had to interact with co-advisors. He had to interact with collaborators in 2 different states. And he had to interact with fishermen and aquaculturists around the state of Maryland. And I think that there's some soft skills there and some sort of almost intangibles, but he navigated that so beautifully, and I think that he created a really stellar thesis and a manuscript that came out of that thesis that got accepted with no revisions. It's never happened to me before. So Matt, it will probably never happen to you either. Hey, I look forward to seeing what your next one does. But it involved getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, running across the bay to work with aquaculture. A lot of late hours, a lot of traveling. And part of his love of science is his love of data. I've never worked with anyone who just loved data. He just wanted to fire, like, we worry about the fire hose of data. I think Matt wanted that so he could throw it into spreadsheets and turn it into, and extract meaning from it. I think there's a sense that there's hidden meaning in all that data, and he's going to go get it. So I think that's going to propel you forward. I think that where you go on next is going to really benefit from that, as all those other qualities that I mentioned. And just to close, the impact of the work that he did is that he's both turned up data and also found data gaps in the literature having to do with blue crab aquaculture and soft crab production that is leading. He's going to come back to the lab. He's finished up his work earlier in the year, but he's going to come back to the lab to meet the Department of Natural Resources crab group at IMET in a couple of weeks' time, because they really need to hear what he has to say, and they're very interested. So congratulations.
Well, it's the tradition of UMCES to lead our students with a charge, and then we have a little legalese to take care of as well. But graduates, you are about to join a unique cadre of scientists that make a significant contribution to fundamental discoveries about the environment, whether it's for sustainability, preservation, recovery, new medicines, new fuels, or simply providing deeper insights and understanding to our natural world. UMCES was founded on not just great science, but also on an understanding of how society benefits from or is affected by the environment. And this is the challenge that you have chosen to dedicate your professional career. You're a product of the smartest and best educated generation ever to grace this planet. But the problems we face today are more complex, more interconnected, and more dynamic than has ever been experienced. And I'd like to leave you with a quote from Alistair Smith, a philosopher who in 2011 said that at times of change, like we're experiencing now, the learners will be the ones who inherit the world, while the knowers will be beautifully prepared for a world that no longer exists. So maintain your curiosity, keep investigating, and realize that commencement, as its name implies, this closes one chapter of your life and the start of the next. We also hope that this is the start of a lifelong connection with your major professors, other faculty, the MEES program, and UMCES. The value of this degree from one of the preeminent research programs in the world will only grow in value over time. So thank you for choosing this career path to contribute to addressing the massive global challenges facing society. And now we come to the conferral of degrees. The Master of Science and Doctor of Philosophy degrees are awarded jointly by the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and the University of Maryland College Park. So I'd like to invite the doctoral students to stand and stay in place. Would you like to rise? By the power invested in me by the Board of Regents of the University System of Maryland, and on the recommendation of the faculty that you have met the high standards and all the necessary requirements, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Please be seated. And if the master's students could please rise. By the power invested in me by the board, congratulations again to the class of 2019.